So, for the last time this year, I'm so pleased to welcome in the studio my colleague, whose name is Yuri Fizer, and this is our Globalist News editor. Hello, and nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Volodymyr.
So, what countries are we going to talk about today?
Russia, Belarus, France, these are just a few countries we are going to talk about today. And actually not about these countries, but about their leadership and about what they did to help us and what they said about our heroic struggle and against Russian aggression. But this and more today. And I will start with this. Russia and Belarus have agreed to deepen their cooperation within so-called Union State. And I would say this is very dangerous for us. They have dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's. This is how the self-proclaimed president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, summed up his visit to Russia and meeting with the president of the aggressor country, Vladimir Putin. It is about the creation of the Union State of Russia and Belarus. On Tuesday morning, Lukashenko stressed that they had finally managed to agree on all the issues that hindered the creation of this state. He added that now they must be finally agreed by the governments of both countries. Lukashenko did not say what exactly they agreed on. Let me remind you that he flew to bow to Putin for the 9th time this year. First, he spent 1 day in Moscow, then he flew to St. Petersburg, where he took part in the informal summit of the heads of the so-called CIS member states.
But if I'm not mistaken, you already mentioned one more country. This is France. Am I talking about right now the very important statement made by the president of France, Emmanuel Macron?
Yes, you are not mistaken. French President Emmanuel Macron made a very unpleasant statement, at least very unpleasant for Ukraine. Ukraine's accession to NATO is an unlikely scenario. French President Emmanuel Macron said this in the interview with the French media. According to him, this will not give Ukraine a guarantee of security. Mr. Macron stressed that Russia may consider our country's accession to the North Atlantic Alliance as a threat to its own security. He added that the most important thing now is to bring Kyiv and Moscow to the negotiating table. At the same time, Western countries, not only China and Turkey, should also join the mediation process. And it is also extremely necessary to develop Europe's own defense capabilities. And to talk more about this, we are joined by the member of the European Parliament representing Lithuania, Mrs. Rasa Juknevičienė. Mrs. Juknevičienė, greetings and thanks for joining us.
Nice to see you.
Mrs. Juknevičienė, my first question to you will be as follows. You are a member of the NATO-Ukraine Parliamentary Interparliamentary Council. How can you comment this recent statement of the President of France, Emmanuel Macron, that Ukraine's accession to NATO is an unlikely scenario?
Macron is doing the same mistake as it was done in 2008, when Ukraine and Georgia were not invited for membership action plan. And that was a crucial mistake. By the way, some members of European Parliament from France, even from Macron party, very powerful, I can quote it and mention, she is Nathalie Loiseau, chair of the Security Subcommittee in European Parliament, several times mentioned publicly that it was a mistake in 2008 not inviting those two countries to NATO, and if it would be done today, maybe we would not have such brutal war. So I am sorry that Macron and French politicians, high-level politicians, are not able to understand the same way as Nathalie Loiseau mentioned already, and some other French politicians also. But this is Macron is not all NATO, and yes, it's not. It's still he still believes that as it happened at that time that their understanding was don't provoke Russia, but Russia was provoked not inviting Ukraine to NATO, not inviting countries like Ukraine and Georgia to be part of NATO, not invited to be part of EU. Fortunately, today's situation is different, and Ukraine and Moldova got some status of candidate to European Union, and it's very important. So step by step. According to my understanding, Ukraine today is more than member of NATO, more than other members of NATO, because Ukraine is acting as it is already a member of NATO and using NATO weapons, is able to use Western weapons. Interoperability is becoming reality, and de facto, as we understand here in Lithuania and very many countries in NATO as well, that Ukraine is de facto already a member of NATO. So it's only a matter of time when Ukraine will become official member of NATO.
Thank you so much.
Not only Ukraine, but we in NATO, we need Ukraine. We have to change narratives in NATO countries. That is not only for Ukraine, not only Ukraine is beneficiary to become a NATO member, but NATO is, we need Ukraine in NATO.
Yeah, it's really pleasant to hear. So, but now let's draw a bit of our attention to our neighboring countries. I mean, Russia and Belarus mentioned by Yuri. So how serious can the friendship between Russia and Belarus be for Europe in general and for Ukraine in particular?
I don't see any big difference, except that if Belarusian armed forces will be used or not used directly against Ukraine, but everything else is almost the same. I remember even 2008, 2012, when I was Minister of Defense in Lithuania, we were discussing on Belarus, on position of Belarus, if any conflict could happen on our soil. So it was very clear that Belarus and Belarusian armed forces, they are like department of Russian Federation. So it's more, I would say, public affairs was going on between Lukashenko and Putin, because they are like Siamese twins today. Lukashenko without Putin is not able to survive at all. So it is nothing new, according to my understanding and evaluations.
Thank you.
Mrs. Yuknevichene, what is just and lasting peace for Ukraine?
What
is just and lasting peace for Ukraine?
We started to speak about NATO membership, about membership in EU, about enlargement of security area. Empty security environment is the biggest provocation for dictators like Russia. But also, I have to say that for me today, question number one is future of Russia. Because we in Lithuania, be it in Poland, be it in other countries around, be it Ukraine, we have the same threats. But your geography is a little bit different because you are much more closer to Russia. And of course, the history was different because Ukraine, unfortunately, was not able to, or I don't know, it was different understanding, mood in the country when you gained, became independent country, you were not following the same example as we in Baltic countries did, joined EU and NATO as soon as possible at that time was. So that, and for us, our example shows that the only guarantee is to become part of Western alliances, be it European Union or be it NATO. But on Russia, what do I mean saying that future of Russia? So I think that this war, victory of Ukraine in this war means a lot for Russia itself and for Belarus as well, because without that victory, it's not possible. I don't see in nearest future change in Russia. But I am among maybe not very many politicians. I still believe that in my lifetime Russia will become different, and this will change landscape in European continent a lot. I would not be able to say today when it will happen and if Russia will become democratic country, but at least non-aggressive, with different regimes, with the possibility to change itself. This is the goal I think we would like all of us to achieve. And this is, here I would like to be back to your question on Macron. When Macron or other politicians speak about some security guarantees for Russia, so he means that maybe Russia forever will be like today, Russia forever with aggressive regimes. So it means that he wants to be back to business as usual with Putin or not Putin in government, but with the same aggressive people. So I also, we speak in the European Parliament, would like to invite politicians in the European Union and in NATO to start to think that about the possibility to have different Russia, about deputinization of Russia, about denuclearization of Russia, about demilitarization of Russia, of course, justice, no impunity on special tribunal, and this will be guarantees for Russian people, for Russia in future to become to become different. So these are the goals for our generation of today, very important goals, and Ukraine is doing the main job.
And what about deputinization of Russia?
Depoliticization doesn't mean that it's not only about Putin. I understand depoliticization like denazification happened with Germany, because this nation, unfortunately, I know very many nice people from Russia. We have contacts with people. They still have some European understanding of Russia's future. But unfortunately, majority of the people there, they are really affected very much like disease. I don't know. They are sick people with their thinking, imperialistic thinking, and it was very similar with the Nazi Germany. When people until the end, until 45, they believed in Hitler, and it took some years, decades to change the country, to change. The new generation came with different thinking. So this is, I think, the only way to have peace and security in the continent in the future, and for Ukraine especially.
But you've just mentioned that in this case, just to deputinize Russia, we need the crucial victory of Ukraine.
Of course. So that's why we are encouraging Western politicians, those from those countries, they have enough resources not to be afraid to help Ukraine, even with long-range missiles or tanks or heavy weapons, not to be afraid to defeat Putin's Russia, and that will help for the future of the whole whole continent in the future. So this is what I think our nearest tasks will be when we will be back to European Parliament. We will talk in January. I think we will be able to discuss resolution on special tribunal for Russia. I think it's very important to have common understanding on the future of Russia as well. It's more and more common understanding on the future of Ukraine. The money also we decided to deliver to Ukraine, and weapons are coming, but not yet about the future of Russia. Some still are afraid to defeat this brutal regime and to help Russian people to live in peace and dignity.
Thank you very much. I think we will have this common understanding. This was Russia Yuknevichan, and a member of the European Parliament representing Lithuania.
So we've talked about the Western countries in supporting Ukraine and Belarus and Russia. What about the Far East?
Let's turn a little bit to the other parts of the world, especially to China. Let's talk a little bit about China. So we will not add fuel to the fire and will not support any side. Instead, we adhere to an objective and impartial approach. This is what Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said earlier this week about the Russian war in Ukraine. At the same time, Beijing is interested in deepening strategic cooperation with Russia. During a video addressed to the participants of the conference, which took place in the capital of China, Mr. Wang Yi also said that in the coming year, official Beijing will even try to expand relations with Russia. It is also worth noting that from the beginning of the war, China refuses to condemn the Russian invasion of Ukraine and criticizes the anti-Russian sanctions imposed by the West. And Russia will soon supply Iran with a squadron of Su-35 fighter jet. These are 24 planes that were originally intended for Egypt. This was reported by the Israeli Channel 12 with reference to sources in Western intelligence, which monitor security agreements between Moscow and Tehran. Russia's deal with Egypt broke down, and now the fighter jets will be delivered to another country, Iran. Besides, Russia may provide Iran with air defense systems, the TV channels reported. Iran, in turn, continues to send kamikaze drones to Moscow. By the end of December, Russia had already received 1,700 drones. Another 300 will be sent in the near future. And this is what this week looked like, the last week of 2022. It's all for today in my part of Spotlight Ukraine.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Latest news, trends, and analytics on all about Ukraine. Like, share, and subscribe. Any questions, proposals, and comments, contact us via email.